Here is why film photography is not more expensive than digital. So many people I know say they would love to try shooting film, but they're just too cheap for it, or film is too expensive, and that's just not really true. Most of the things people say about film photography are true. It takes longer to wind your film, it takes longer to focus, it's a lot harder to meter and take your final shot and get your photos back. But the one thing that is a slight misconception is the cost of film, and to prove that, we need to do a little bit of math. So let's say that on average a roll of film costs about $10. It might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less, but for the sake of math simplicity, let's just say $10. Now to get that film developed and scanned, let's say it's about $20, which brings your total per roll to $30. If you divide that by 36 photos in a roll, you get about 83 cents per photo, which seems like a lot, but we gotta put it in context. A decent modern digital camera will cost you around $1,200, but by comparison, a really nice film camera can be about $200 with a lens, so that leaves us with about $1,000 for film and developing. Now, if you take those $1,000 and divide them by $30 per roll, you get around 33 rolls of film, which if multiplied by 36 shots in each roll gives you 1,200 photos. To me, 1,200 photos simultaneously seems like a lot and not that many photos, but if you put it in some context, it's equivalent to shooting a photo every single day for over 3 years, which seems like a lot to me. And keep in mind that $1,000 film budget is in reference to a $1,200 digital camera, when in reality, a lot of them are $2,000, $3,000, or even $5,000. So that's a lot of film potential. But that being said, film might not be the best photographic technology for every situation. Take a low light action sports scene, like it just doesn't make sense in any way, and that's where your modern digital camera does make sense with its higher frame rates and low light sensitivity. The point I'm trying to get at here is film seems more expensive because you're paying for that film each time and you're paying for it to be developed and scanned each time, whereas a digital camera is just one big purchase. So film technically is more small purchases, but the total cost doesn't really add up to be more. But obviously this depends how you're shooting your film. If you're just shooting recklessly and just taking a ton of shots with no real intention, then you will eventually end up probably spending more than digital. But if you're taking your time to frame your shots how you want them and being more particular with your art form, you will find that it's not really that much more expensive, if at all. So that's a pretty big disclaimer, but I think most people treat film as a different art form than digital photography, and because of that, they're not firing off as many frames. And I find because of this slower process in film photography, I end up liking a much higher percentage of my final photos. So even though you might only get 1,200 film photos, those are going to be much higher quality than the equivalent of 1,200 digital photos just because of the process involved. So obviously not everyone's going to agree. Film photography can get very, very expensive if you're shooting a ton of rolls, if you're shooting bigger format film, but digital photography can also be really expensive. You can buy a $10,000 camera, for example, so you got to put it in context.